The Storyteller Corner welcomes two-time Obie winner, actor-playwright Charlayne Woodard. She's been in the business since 1975, and today she's speaking with us.
Welcome, Charlayne. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Hey, listen, your room is beautiful. The colors and you in the blue. That's it. This is my Zoom room.
I love it. So I'd like to dive straight in. And my first question to you is, do you consider that you've had a very specific big break in your career? And if so, who are the people and what are the circumstances that contributed to that moment?
I had a big break. I went to conservatory at the Goodman School of Drama in Chicago. And in my second year, we had a guest artist come to the school for an entire semester. Her name was Vinette Carroll. And Vinette Carroll was the first Black woman director of a hit Broadway musical ever. And she directed Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope, written by Mickey Grant, who was an actress. And so she came, and I thought, oh my goodness. Every night I went to bed visualizing something great is going to happen for me because of working with Vinette Carroll. I would visualize that. That's what I do. That's how I go to bed at night. And I make up these very visual stories. And Vinette became a great friend of mine. And we worked on The Crucible together. She directed The Crucible. And I played Abigail, and we were doing, she wanted to do a scene where Abigail is seducing John Proctor. She says, oh my God, I need the choir to be singing Peace Be Still with that crescendo while she's seducing John Proctor. I wish someone here could knew that song, Peace Be Still. I said, oh, I know that song. So she says, teach it to the choir. So we start rehearsal. I had to go over and teach the townspeople Peace Be Still, so that while they're doing the scene, they would be singing this song, the crescendo, very sexual. Anyway, I was teaching them, and she goes, oh my God, darling, you can sing. I said, well, in my church choir. She says, fine, that was that. And then at the end of her time being there, she asked me if I wanted to go to the Spoleto Festival with her and her theater group, the Urban Arts Corps. And I was like, yes, how much is it gonna pay for the summer? And she said, oh, it's nothing, it's free. I said, I can't do it because I have to work in order to make money to come back to school. You see, I went to a school that had no financial aid. So I had to take out loans and I had to work. And I said, I have to turn it down. She was telling this Spoleto Festival. I said, I cannot. And she thought that was a shame. About a few days later, she asked me, you need money? You want to do a bus and truck tour of my Broadway play, the musical Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope? I said, well, how much is it paying? Because I make a lot being a head of cultural enrichment at Camp Opportunity. That was my summer job, and it was great money. And she said, equity minimum, $500 a week. I couldn't believe it. And I would be touring months and months, the whole summer. I'd actually have to get out of school like 2 weeks early to start rehearsal in New York City. And I would get my card. I did that. And I met Mickey Grant, the writer, who was an actor, who said, she came to the rehearsals of the bus and truck tour. Now, what writer does that? But there she was. And I asked her, what made her write a play, She says, I wanted to be on Broadway. And I'm a Black woman. So I figured I better write it myself.
That's such a great segue for you as a playwright and how you came to write stories yourself.
I held on to that. Mickey Grant is a great, great friend of mine to this day. And I held on to that. And but then I had to get going because I had to learn how to, like, how do I do this musical? I'm not. It was my first musical. So, but what happened is, because of the net, when I came to New York, I came with an equity card, and I came and I went to an open call, equity call, 500 kids in line for the revival of Hair. So, 2 weeks after arriving in New York from school, I was on Broadway. And that was that. I would call that whole relationship with Lynette Carroll and how Mickey Grant affected me. I would call that the breakthrough. Everything else followed that. You know,
That is a fascinating story.
I know it would have been a different thing if I had not met her. And she would always let you know about what you're supposed to do as a young actor. You know, trust yourself. Only yourself. She said, you have to trust yourself. If you don't trust yourself, don't bother, because nobody else trusts you.
Well, that leads me to my next question. If you had an opportunity to go back to those years and speak to yourself, what are the things you would tell yourself? Like, if you had an hour with yourself, you know, what would you tell yourself? What to watch out for, what to do, what not to do? I don't know. What are the things you would warn your younger self about in this, in specifically to, of course, our industry, related to our industry?
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing about me is that, you know, I was raised in a home where everyone had to, at all times, show respect to their elders and show respect to your siblings. We couldn't fight in the house. 5 kids, and there was no fighting. I'm the oldest of 5. 5 kids. We had a bevy of aunts and uncles, grandparents on both sides. Respect. No attitude, no anger, no pouting, ever. So I sat on all of that, you know. And then in drama school, you know, they start, you know, first year, you're getting rid of inhibitions, you know, that kind of thing. But what happened is, I came to New York, and in the theater, the professional theater, I saw people were being absolutely authentic all the time, especially in musicals, and they were just impulsive, and people could be angry, and people could be sad, and people could be, I mean, you could act on every impulse, which is what I did. So things would make me fly off the handle, or things would make me get very angry, and then I'd react or whatever. If I could look back at that woman in the 20s, her 20s, and tell her something, I would tell her what I learned when I turned 30. You're take care of yourself, Charlayne. Don't just take care of the work, the play, the gym. What about this? What about your soul? What about the fact that everybody in that rehearsal room has the same God in you that's operating in you is operating in them. So they need the respect you would give to your auntie and your uncle. You must respect everyone who has given their time and energy and training to do what we do, to our passion. I must not follow every impulse. I must meditate. When I became 30, I found the self-help section of the bookstore. And that's when I saw, you have more control of yourself than you think, Charlayne. You don't have to be, you know, like tossed and turning and, fretting. I hope I get it. Or I didn't get it. You know, you don't have to do all that, because you're covered. You know, I like to say, like, the same God that was governing Michael Jordan was governing me. Act like it. So that's what I would tell my young self. Take care of you. Don't leave you out of the equation. And when I say you, I mean your soul and your spirit. Because I know sometimes I would walk into a room for an audition, and I would be so grounded and present and happy, that would get me the job. I never performed well in auditions, ever. But something else would get me the job. And I knew it. Couldn't tap into it. But when I became 30, I started looking for how to tap into that thing that was getting me those jobs.
I would love for you to take a moment to talk about the power and responsibility that come with creating characters whose stories are powerful enough to share with the world, and also your why you created them, whether it's a vehicle as for yourself, as Mickey taught you, or whether it's something broader or a combination of both. I'd love to talk to hear you talk about that.
Well, I feel like, first of all, I love working on original work. I really love being a part of the work that contributes to the American canon. I love originating work. That's all I want to do, is originate. And I love that I've had the opportunity to work with really the fiercest new playwrights who are ever so taking such risks and creating challenging characters that I've never seen before on the stage. And I have a responsibility to the playwright to lift his or her or their character off the page and make it breathe, bring it to life. And so I have been very fortunate to work with living playwrights who are in the room. And these playwrights are there to answer every question. And I feel I want to respect their wishes and let them see what they wrote. I don't have a judgment over, this is not quite right. I don't do that. I say, this is what you wrote. And it's my job to bring that to life. I remember working with Susan Laurie Parks. Hester La Negrita was the character on In the Blood by Susan Laurie Parks. And she had this character called Hester La Negrita. Mm-hmm. She was illiterate. Mm-hmm. She was the mother of 5 kids living under a bridge. And I had 6 weeks to create her and 3 weeks of previews. That's how it was back in the day. At the Public Theater, George Wolfe was running the Public, and 6 weeks. You could bathe it. You could just really bathe in that 6 weeks. You could come to rehearsal and you could really use that rehearsal like it was a gymnasium, because it wasn't 3 weeks for an original work, it was 6. So there I was deciding on working on different things as I found out who she was, very, very complicated character who sort of starts the play unbalanced. And things, so one day, 2 weeks in, we're in rehearsal, and Susan Laurie jumps up and says, "That is not how Hester La Negrita speaks." And I said, "I know she doesn't speak like I speak. I know that. I don't want to pin some cliched, illiterate dialect, on this woman. As I create her, as she shows up to me, she will actually speak the way she actually speaks. I have 4 more weeks before we come before an audience. I promise you, she will not speak like I speak. But that was like, see how exciting it is to be in the room with those living playwrights, and then she, Susan Laurie left a rehearsal, but I ended up, I had 6 weeks. I was working on my relationship with my kids the first week. 2 weeks, it was a love fest. And then George came to a run through and said, "This is a love fest." And then we had to adjust that. Let's go deeper and deeper and deeper. You know what I mean? And, but at the end, Hester got her, I got an Obie for that work. I had time to do the work. And I had 3 weeks of previews. That's golden. That's when the work really begins, in those previews. And my characters all come from my observations, my experiences, events in my life. I know them, most of them, like the back of my hand. Otherwise, I know them already. I try to, I don't work on how to create that character. I just, in my solo work, I don't work on that. I've just written a 2-character play that it is not autobiographical at all. And all of my other plays have that autobiographical thing happening, but here, no. With the garden, it's called The Garden. And I have those 2 ladies in that garden. And I did have to think about the truth of who they were. And right now I'm trying to, in the rewrites, because we're about to do it for Baltimore Center Stage and La Jolla Playhouse, right now I'm trying to make sure that the whole thing is actable, that these 2 characters are not just 2 characters only I can do. I want to make sure that they are characters everybody can do.
One of the most recent works you did, you worked on Hamlet in New York. How, if in any way, do you change your approach in that rehearsal?
There's this history that goes with Gertrude. There's this history. But because of my director, he did not really stress that we deal with all the history of those people. But he really did want us to dig as if it's brand new. It's an original character that you're finding, where you see in these original shows, the playwrights have put clues all through the play about your character. So you have to find those clues. And that's what I did with Gertrude. I look for the clues. And my approach is not really very different unless I see in there that, okay, for instance, I said, did she really see Ophelia kill herself? Did she really stand there and let that girl drown? These questions that you get to ask. Did she really believe her son, or did she not? These questions are really great. Why did she let Ophelia drown if she saw her do it? These questions reveal so much to me about the person. And some nights I would be answering that question right then and there. It would switch up, because every night in that show, everybody showed up differently every night. Some nights my husband would grab Hamlet and kiss him right on the mouth in that first scene. And everybody be like, whoo, and then it was on, And some nights it would be a gentle scene. And then it would be on like that. It'd start like that. I loved working on Hamlet because that cast was unbelievable. They were the most risk-taking group of people I've ever worked with like that. After 8 Misbehaving, the cast of 8. I mean, these guys. And every night, you know how they say, every night, make it yours. Every night, make it new. Well, you had no choice, Sometimes Hamlet would show up, in my room like, you bitch. And sometimes he'd be like, mother, but the fight would be on. But it was all, I never knew how he would show up. I never knew he was going to show up. It was fabulous. It was scary, quite scary. And it was very difficult, if you ask me. But They were all in it like that. And every night I had to stop myself from watching the show. Yeah, I think I work the same way for everything in theater.
One last question for the younger contemporaries of ours who are just starting out in this industry. What would you like to teach them about that sort of etiquette, that behavior in the room?
I remind myself daily as I'm going to work that I'm in the people business. And we're all coming to that rehearsal room at 10 o'clock in the morning from homes that have all kinds of stuff going on. I just remind myself and that the people in the room are just like me. And when someone's going off and takes a script and throw it across the room, that's allowed. You can throw that script across the room because you're going to learn something from that. I'm going to learn something from all the behavior of everybody there. What I don't do is let that behavior affect me in a bad way. I get very bored in these rooms sometimes with these really lovely young graduates of these wonderful MFA programs. And they all know exactly how to work and they all know exactly what to do. You know, all these things we do now that we didn't do. 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, 5. We didn't do that in the old days, you know. But we have all these rules, all these new rules, because in school they're telling you how to work and there's a code of conduct. And I love it when all of a sudden something happens that nobody counted on that day in rehearsal. That doesn't come from being just, you know, holding yourself down. We're digging for gold and we don't know where it's going to come from.
Well, Charlayne, I want to thank you for sharing this time with us. I love and adore you.
Oh, I love and adore you too. Anything for you, Armina. Anything.
Thank you, Charlayne.
Okay, thanks.
Until we talk again.
Bye-bye.